Hello, everyone, and welcome to And the Beat Goes On. My name is Arion Harley Emerson, and I'm the Director of Music and Operations here at the Choir School of Delaware. And today we are so excited to have online with us today Craig Hella Johnson. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you all, and this is really special today.
And we're also being joined with our Director of Education and our Assistant Conductor, Brittany Stanton. Thanks for being with us, Brittany.
I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So we are going to have a wonderful conversation today. Our conversation is going to be a wide-ranging conversation on a number of different topics that I think is going to be really exciting. So first, Craig, tell us, how are you doing during these uncertain, crazy times?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty well here today. Um, I look forward to these connection moments always, so they bring me a lot of joy just because I'm reminded again, seeing your faces, feeling people who are with us, who have a shared love for music and teaching and this art form and life itself. So, this is great. And I'm coming on here first. This is my first back to primetime experience. I had some periodontal work, so I was totally like swollen out here, and I'm still kind of swollen. I'm really happy to be starting to feel better today finally. But I'm still talking a little funny. But my brain is clear and my heart is intent on everything we get to talk about today. So I'm doing well.
Great. And now I'm guessing you had a lot of things that were canceled because of COVID in this past spring. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we did. My primary role, certainly as artistic director at Conspirare, it meant we had to make decisions like so many people did. And so we had probably, I think, two spring reps that were canceled, and several other smaller projects too, and things. And there were many things this summer that I was going to be involved with and that have all been canceled. Also, I'm an artist in residence at Texas State University. And so all those classes, of course, went online, and my private conducting students and choral literature, those things, and then their concerts were canceled too. I don't conduct a group there right now, but and then and then I conduct in Cincinnati as well, and we had to miss two repertoires, which was really hard. So we feel it so much, and so we lost many of those in-person experiences, and we've been trying to listen. I think this is a period of real listening for all of us too. It's so easy to feel we have to fill the empty space up with something right away, and we've been trying to do that. Musicians' great skill, which is listening within too, to say, is this my time to take an action, or is this my time to remain quiet for a bit longer, to say what is that right next step, because we're all of us searching for what are the right next steps, aren't we? And it's easy to start kind of doing the running around with our head cut off, sort of just fill in the empty space with whatever we can, and I think we've been so many beautiful efforts and intentions happening, in our profession and with the human family in general. But I've also really wanted to be trying to remain grounded during this time, to say what is my role, kind of staying in touch. And I say this is true for all of us, conductors, singers, teachers, but to just tap into what are the essential aspects of what I do, and not just even the doing, for example, the conducting itself, or in the teacher's case, the teaching, but underneath, it's I've been asking, what are the whys of this music? Why do we do it? What is its purpose and its value? What is my role in these ways? In this, why did I sign on? Why did I make my sort of commitment, my vow to music in the first place? So taking time to ask those questions, and when I find that when I do ask those questions really quietly, then what emerges for me is a sense of, oh, that's right, this is the why of why I do this. And then to connect, to say, okay, in this very extraordinary, challenging time, so hard, how do I remain connected with that why? And it just needs to find new forms for a time right now. It needs to find new ways of expressing itself. And so that's kind of what I've been trying to be about. And also, frankly, this is everybody's story is different, but each of us, I think, also needs time for rest and space. So part of the months in the spring certainly were, being at home a whole lot more than I had been in many years. And and so just what is it to be at home and feel the grass in my front yard? And sometimes I would just go sit on the grass or lie down and feel the earth. So there are a lot of gifts inside of the really dark challenges of COVID time too.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit about, for folks who are just like, who is Craig Hella Johnson? How did you get into music? Tell us about what were you like as a kid? How did you get into music, and how did you get to where you are today?
Hmm. Yes. No. Who is Craig Taylor Johnson? I ask myself that every single day. I will say too, even though I'm 58, I am still a kid. I still ask those questions of, I don't really. It's not what am I going to be when I grow up, but it sort of has that quality. There's a curiosity in it, which I love in our musical lives, our creative lives. There's still that sense of wow. I'm only just getting started here. It feels like so many days to me. Let's see. Who am I? I think I'll think about it in the third person. Who is Craig Hollis Johnson? Anyway, I grew up in Minnesota. I'm super regular inside and out in terms of just the way I go about my life. I have, I think, all the human challenges we all have too. I feel very blessed and fortunate in so many ways to be able to get to do this work that we get to do. My home is in Minnesota. I grew up up in the north, so very cold, like 70 miles from the Canadian border. And Minnesota is a big choral state, and so I used to say, everyone sings in a choir in Minnesota. It wasn't exactly statistically true, but I almost. And I think a lot of that had to do with the weather because it was so cold. You might as well go inside and sing in a choir since it's so cold and there's like 12 feet of snow outside your house. But I loved it. I had fun singing growing up. I'm a pianist by sort of birthright. That's my main instrument, my go-to always. And I grew up playing by ear. It was a very painful process for me to learn how to read by notes. I had a very traumatic time. I'd always listened. I would come home from my piano lessons and ask my mom to play them, and then I would have it down after the first hearing. And then there was a day when I think I was in third grade or something, or fourth grade, or she said, these pieces are starting to get too hard for me, Craig. I can't play them anymore. And it was like a da 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 dee.
Mhm.
I'm gonna have to encounter those black dots. Like I was faking it the whole time. And so that was a bit of a matter, but I always have, we can talk more about that and the whole idea of improvisation and ear and the part it plays. But yeah, I was definitely an ear musician always first, and then the visual came later. Had a great piano teacher though. I played the trumpet, played the organ growing up. I was church organist, and my dad was a preacher, so by probably seventh grade I think I was the organist, and kind of was better money than the paper route for sure. And I used to put a little tip jar in the organ, and my friends would throw money in there if I would improvise to like a theme from Star Wars or something like that. So do some kind of a fugue on one of the Star Wars themes, and then it was always so funny because some of the nice people might come out of the church or after that communion, and they'll say, "That piece sounded familiar. What was that?" And I might give it a fancy name, variations on the Jedi, whatever. No, but yeah. So anyway, that's me. I went to St. Olaf College. I loved that place. It was a beautiful place for me to get to go. I had a beautiful piano teacher, orchestral conducting teacher, a wonderful choir. My choral time there was with Kenneth Jennings, who was so special, such a gorgeous musician, and I feel like so much of my choral shaping happened at that time. Got to do masters at the University of Illinois, and I loved that program too. I got to go to Germany and work with the wonderful Helmut Rilling, who was a very important mentor in my life. Singing at the Bach, conducted. I was one of 5 students at the Bach Academy in Stuttgart, in West Germany. West Germany at that time, I guess I'll say. And yeah, I came back and did some church work. But when I was back, I did a doctorate at Yale, which was a wonderful experience. And then I came and began to teach here right out of school at the University of Texas at Austin. I never thought I'd live in Texas in a million years, and then I found myself transplanted to this hot, bakey place. And I've mostly been here since 1990. I started out at UT, which I was there for 11 years, and I started Conspirare at that time. My second year here, I started this group, so it's been kind of in operation like 27 years now. And we called it at first the New Texas Festival. But I came to really love Texas. It's this big old country that's just always changing, and it's like a wilderness, and I kind of felt like a pioneer.
Mhm.
But it's a special place, as wonderful and strange as it is too. And what else? I went to work with Chanticleer, the wonderful male a cappella group, of course, for about a year and a half. I was their artistic director. And I might have stayed a lot longer, but I was really called back to do the work with Conspirare at that time, and so came back to Texas. Yeah, and I'm composing. I do a good bit of orchestral choral conducting as well, and um, I love to write songs and anyway, so that's a little bit about me musically. And I'm a big movie freak. I could be in the movie theater all day and all night, and I would be happy. And so that's kind of a little bit about who that guy, Craig Hella Johnson, is. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank
Mhm.
you for that.
Mhm.
So how did you, what about choral music called you? Why are you not a concert pianist today?
Yeah,
What about choral music and the choral arts?
that's a fun question. You know, for me it was so strange. I kind of fell into it because I was really at first I thought I will like to try and concertize or something. You know, whether one can or not, who knows? But that was a dream, and I had some I'm good chops. I'm a good pianist. You know, not so much anymore because I've lost a lot. But and then I really had a real my conducting bite came in the orchestral realm because I saw Klaus Tenstedt and just seeing him changed my life. He conducted a rehearsal of the Minnesota Orchestra, and it was like a Saul to Paul experience. Like that is what I want to do. So I really focused there a good bit for 2 years, very intensely in my undergrad too, just with that in mind. And then, as I was about to head to grad school, um, I had an offer of this scholarship, a really great full scholarship at University of Illinois, and I just thought, huh, that's. I was applying to all these other programs, and I just never thought about it. Like, because choral music for me, I always sing in a choir. It's sort of like you sing in a choir, you brush your teeth, you know, you put your clothes on in the morning. You know, it's just like part of your life, but you don't go into that, do you? You know, really. I mean, seemed so obvious. It was so close to me. And then, I don't know, maybe it was one of those love stories or something like when, you know, you're next to a childhood best friend or something, and all of a sudden you realize you absolutely love them, and you know, one of those stories. But I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I could do this. I could make an offering here. This is amazing. So it started to really call out to me, and I was so thrilled. And you know, and I never have left. I just decided I would devote myself, and it was a little hard to grieve giving up that whole orchestral repertoire, which I love so much, and but there was a way in which I also just thought for the world, you know, there are plenty of wonderful orchestral conductors. Maybe the world doesn't need another one to join the ranks. And choral music is something I love so much. And so why not devote myself to it? I think, Ariane, I was just, you know, I remember my time in the St. Olaf choir too, and just there's just something so exquisite about what it was to kind of create from the inside, for example, to create a unison with other people. What does it mean? I was in love with both the kind of practical aspect of creating a sound that was shared, but also the symbolic aspect of what it is to really be in consort with one another, to really be in unison with others, with other spirits, with their breath, you know, to share a common breath and a movement of that. And to listen to the diversity of human beings, you know, bringing forth uh, these sounds. So I really, I just did kind of refall in love with it. And then, you know, there was no turning back, I guess.
Yeah, I hear that. Now, one of the things that I would love to kind of like circle back to, which I think is very interesting, is your kind of experience with learning the piano and going from ear to visually seeing music. And I think that your experience is one that many people have had, but one that now science is saying is actually the best way to
Mhm.
teach. And the works of Edwin Gordon and music learning theory are becoming more and more popular, and people are kind of moving away from some of the Kodai based methods, and now we're really thinking about that those formative years need to be more experimental in nature, and that those formative years need to be about really uh, building the capacity to audiate. And when you were chatting, I was thinking that by playing by ear so much, that really flexes that audiation skills
Mhm.
and that skill set for audiation. And so the more and more I have discussions with people, it's a similar story, and I'm wondering, hey, I think there's probably a connection here to like the work of Gordon here, and that ability to audiate and to know exactly the sound that one wants to be able to create. And speaking
Mhm.
of that sound that you want to create, when you're working with your ensembles, are you are do you already have you already conceived of what you want the sound to be, or are you discovering it in real time with everyone else?
Yeah, great questions. So I'll maybe start with your second question and then back up to the freedom and audiation question kind of. But yeah, with regards to sound, I think my experience, I've been always more interested in um, learning what sound is going to emerge. So I mean, in a way, there's always a sound ideal. So we're taught that as conductors, and I teach that too. So certainly to have an aural expectation, yeah, without a doubt. But I don't want to be too prescriptive or dogmatic about that. And maybe a simpler way to say it is, for many, it doesn't happen so much anymore. And maybe I just haven't encountered people who have asked me that. But for many years, initially, people would say, Craig, what's your ideal choral sound, or what's your ideal soprano choral sound? And it was a question that was very uncomfortable with, because I just thought, you know, gosh, I want it to sound different for depending on what the repertoire is, and this has to be, you know, everything is dependent not even just on a composer but a given piece of music, and perhaps so many factors that influence that, with the character and the essence of the music itself, the text, the gesture, So I mean, I want to leave that open to that more nuanced approach. And but I mean, that being said, I also, the choir has to operate as an instrument, right? And so what is it? It's not to create the most homogeneous sound that delivers, because that to me is pretty boring if a choir is singing everything in the same way, and then it becomes kind of very choir centric or even conductor centric sometimes. Like, this is just, there were some choirs that I grew up hearing, some very famous choirs when I was a young kid, that you used to, they were thrilling to hear. For it was almost like a feat, like, wow, the sound that they make. But then after 10 minutes, it's like, okay, got it. That's the same sound you're going to make whether you're singing Bach or Caroline Shaw or a piece of Rella Dilworth, or you name it. It's going to sound like that choir. And certain actors and actresses are kind of like that. You're always getting them before the character. And so, but I think so it's just differentiating there. What is sort of ensemble basic practice? And for that kind of sound, I'm very kind of consistent, almost boring, just in terms of foundation, which, I just talk about with any ensemble, the things that we share without question, no matter what we're singing. We share the pitch, we share the rhythm, we share the vowel, we share the dynamic, boom, 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 boom. And those things, and then we can add things to that, kind of subgroups. You could also say you share it in, sometimes I say we share an intention of a phrase, of course. But those four basic building blocks are just very practical, and they get me in the door all the time. So it doesn't matter what rep we're singing or what um, level of singers, if it's a middle school group or professionals with big instruments developed, I still want those singers sharing the vowel, always. And that's sort of such a basic building block. And it sounds so obvious to say it, but I'm amazed at how many times it probably needs to be restated so that we can really get grounded in that. And I think even, in the areas where, for example, in music schools, sometimes where there have been difficulties with voice teachers and choral faculties, for example, those kinds of things that sometimes there have been famous stories, and I think it's getting better across the country. But in general, that still can come up when a voice teacher might say, "I don't want you to kind of manipulate a young voice in the choral program." And all in those kind of times, I say, "Look, this is just really basic. These are just musicianship skills. This is sharing the size of an oval. No harm can be done. Sharing the rhythm, that's an important musical skill to really, and you can spend a lifetime grounding into what it is to actually share this rhythm. Like the best string quartets will play a gesture over and over to listen to say, are we really in sync with how we are perceiving this gesture rhythmically or and shapely. Yeah, pitch, you know, pitch is something we don't need to argue about. It's just like find the center of the pitch and continue to grow, and we share that pitch. And so those are kind of the ways, Ariane, that I get into those ensemble issues that develop foundation. Then on top of that, I'm really interested in allowing voices to be what they are, and there, I think, a lot of things with the instrument's capacity too that can be developed just through seating and placement. So I think certain colors with certain colors, and I will vary that even depending on the piece. Sometimes it's just about the mechanics of the section, but sometimes it might be that I know if I put these three singers together, there's a little bit more of a darker kind of husky color that might really shade this particular piece well. So I'll kind of move that group together, for example. So I think I do go in with an expectation, but the expectation is one has to do always with the music itself, the musical text that we're serving, and then the human beings who are there. Because, like, for example, Conspirare is an evolving group, and the sound, there might be similar, if someone says, yeah, I can recognize Conspirare when I hear it, there might be some similarities from year to year and things because they know a basic instrument palette. But I hope always that the colors that come and the sounds that come will be reflected very much by the individuals who are there, who each contribute sort of their own salt and seasoning to that particular section color and ensemble color. Just for fun, to back up to your listening, improvising, kind of playing by ear question, I would just wanted to say yes, yes, and yes to what you were saying, because if we can backtrack there, because I know I was talking a while about the other, but I think this idea of freedom is really critical in young musical training. What I will say, kind of as a backdoor into this conversation, is I get to teach this really fun class at Texas State that I developed called Sound Lab. And it's a lot of improvisation. We just kind of do everything in there. It's sort of a playscape for undergrads and grad students who have become so serious in their musical training. And I am dealing with like a generation of students, many of whom are just freaked out by the idea of improvising. And they kind of forget the fact that they might have their own sound impulse. They haven't lost it. I have not yet in 4 semesters had a student who's been an exception to this rule, but they feel like, oh, I can't, because they've been so indoctrinated in this idea that it's just the notes on the page, and there's some kind of sterile relationship they have with it. I'm generalizing, but I mean, it gets us in the conversation. And what I feel like I spend my time is just undoing that and just allowing people to come back to remember their imagination, to remember their sound impulses, and that comes from an emotional impulse. So we even spend some time in class just humming, beginning to hum, sort of just hum an emotion. And then from that impulse, can you open the mouth and let a sound be heard, and to then develop an idea, a gesture from that. And it's really moving. I mean, there are a lot of tears actually shed because it feels like it's a healing that takes place in there. And so it just speaks to what you're saying, this kind of empowering, kind of re-empowering we need to do with in our musical training. And if we can catch people when they're young. I was definitely kind of shamed for playing by ear.
Oh
It
yeah.
seemed like this amazing thing to get to do, and it was so free, and my heart just felt happy when I got to do it. And then all of a sudden it was like, three hits on the
Yeah.
wrist, like, don't do that bad. So I had to kind of unlearn it, and I thought, this is ridiculous. This is like my best natural skill set. And I think
Ah,
it's true for everybody.
yeah. I think it's very true, and it's really a complex issue that I've been really kind of having a lot of discussions on, because it also has a lot of like cultural and racial implications. Because
Mm,
when I was growing up, like that skill was the skill that that we were taught in church. It was like, oh, well, we're gonna, like, you should be able to identify these different keys
right?
by hearing it. You should be able to do and and then when you start formal music training, it's like throw that all away, and then you try to relearn it in dictation, right? So
Yeah.
you're so it's like we're constantly like kind of not quite finding the linear path, and perhaps there is no linear path for anyone. We're just all on a circle, and it depends where we begin on that circle. But I know I felt so similarly as a kid, and I don't know, Brittany, what your experience was like, if you were really encouraged to read notation very early, or
It was very notation based.
Yeah.
From the
Mhm.
general music classroom to my private piano lessons, like I learned notation, I learned how to play notes on a page. And to this day, improvisation is a very difficult thing for me. And I think it's because it was not part of that experience when I was younger. It just wasn't something that was taught. I don't
Right.
know why, but I do think it would have been different had I had that encouragement back then. It would have been
Yeah.
easier for me now.
Yes. Yes.
I definitely agree.
Well, it's beautiful to be talking about it. We should talk about it more and frequently because we want to help heal all that kind of wounding that happened with this musically, because it's such a sad and unnecessary shutdown. And like I've seen what you're talking about, Brittany, a lot. Just like people who are really terrified because they think they don't have the maybe the capacity or the skill, or it's not natural. And it's like nothing could be further from the truth. If someone's felt this love for music, that spark is in you, and it just needs to be nurtured. Yeah, I had to many years ago. Uh, Really quickly, I'll just share the story. But these lovely folks came to me when I was kind of a young teacher in my 20s, and they had heard that I improvise, and they wanted to have me teach their daughter improvisation, and I thought, oh, I have no idea how to do that. I was really busy with a lot of other things too, and I thought, anyway, these very dear people kind of came back to me 3 or 4 times, and they kept upping the price, like, we will pay you this if you'll teach. And I was like, at some point, like, okay, that'd be a
Yeah.
yes right now. I will say yes to that. I don't know what I'm doing, and I was really honest, like, full disclaimer. I've never taught anything like this, but I do know how to do it, or whatever. I mean, I know how to feel courageous enough to start making sounds and make music. So I took her in, and I will say, I'm just going to say it in the most kind of gross way, just because this is she was an amazing student. But she seemed initially like very limited talent, limited expression. She was very kind of closed, contracted, small kind of expression. And I thought, oh lordy, this is going to be. And she's coming twice a week and sitting in my little front room, and we're going to try and do this thing. And so I just thought, okay, one thing, I was smart enough to go back and say, what do I know? Here's a bunch I don't know, but what I do know is you have to go back to your experience, and what do you think was it that nurtured my ability to be free and express? And then I thought, you know what? I think it was that church where everybody probably felt some big obligation to love the pastor's kid, even if they didn't. And so and so there were like 2,000 people just putting a lot of love. And so when I started playing, I think I played some god awful things in that church, just like terrible. But there were so many people coming by and saying, "Oh man, we just loved you. You just made some music today. Thank you. That was so beautiful. You just make joyful noise, Craig." And I have all my band friends, with the flute players who'd cross their legs in terrible posture, playing their Easter arrangements that I would make, and they were, I'm sure, just god awful. But there was this affirmation that held the creative aspect up, like, go for it, make those sounds. And I don't remember for years feeling a no coming at it. And I don't, there's going to be a lot of people hearing this and having thoughts. But what I will say for me, my experience was that wonderful, warm, supportive environment that says who you are is not only okay, but it's celebrated. And what you have to say, we're interested in hearing. This gets back to equity issues too. It's so fundamental, and it's for absolutely everybody. But for me as a young kid, and I was a kid, I was so kind of hurting. I was scared a lot. I was bashful. I was already realizing I was gay in this world that wasn't going to be very accepting of that at all. And so it was just a lot of hard stuff going through my head. But here was this place that said, when you make sounds, you go for it. You let your wings out. And so I took this back, this memory, and I thought she needs an environment like that. I don't know her at all, but I'm just going to hold the space for her of safety, of joy in making music making, in courage to try and fall, and that not being any big deal at all. And just the fact that we're making sounds, that we're here, is a beautiful thing. And so I just did. I lifted her up in that, and I kind of remember sort of developing a pedagogy around it, sort of, and we just, it was a lot of play, like what you were referencing, Ariane, too, and it was a lot of play, and I entered in and said, I got to have some fun with this too, and it was dynamic and relational, and I tell you, by the last, like after 10, 11 months, and we went for a while beyond that too, she was writing these really cool songs. And great lyrics too, because we did word games, and it was just like her awareness, and then wisdom takes over. Any great teacher knows that the deepest wisdom is found within. And so that took over for her, but she got the reminder that she was born a creator, and she's a co-creator with creation itself. And so, that's the magic. If we can keep saying that to people's faces and to their hearts and their bodies that are so tired from all the toxicity in our world, and remind them that they're creatives, then in a way our work is done. Just keep holding the space. So anyway, I could go on and on about it, but it's
Yeah,
fun
I
to talk
love
about.
that. I really, really do. And I feel like, people are beginning now I'm starting to see more articles about the need for us to to do improvisation, and to even the youngest child can do improv, and the youngest child can compose, with,
Hmm.
small, with a limited color palette and tonal palette. So I think that, I don't know, I wish we would do more of it, and I hope that we do. A question that I have for you is, when you're working with these professional singers and these fantastic instruments, how do you bring them into becoming actively being artists? How is everyone empowered to contribute to musical ideas?
That's a nice question. Yeah, meaningful. What comes up on the first screen for me just is to say that I choose to respect them as artists. And I choose to respect just that very thing we've just been talking about. Their creative dignity and identity. And as I'm saying this, I'm also really aware that I would be saying this if I was talking about a sixth grader too. There's some way in which, if I'm working with really young singers, which I don't get to do half as much anymore these days, but when I do, it's that same thing about having a deep respect for the sacredness of their creative gift. And and so I think if people really see that authentically witnessed and feel it being seen, then all of a sudden it's like you stand a little taller and you say, "Oh, I'm actually being called forth to invest from myself here. I'm not just taking instructions from a director on high, you know." But yeah, I mean, I really want people to kind of earn their chairs too, in a sense of, I don't mean earning it necessarily, yeah, but claim it is really what I mean. Like, claim your chair. Like, I'm interested, no matter what the singing level is, that each person there is taking responsibility for their creative gift and for their life, and to say you have a choice to be here. And that's true for students too. You know, we can share that with them to some degree, you know, to say there's a choice that you're here and you making choices all the time. And I'm asking you to choose to be present in this room, to be bringing your full self. What I do in return is to honor that full self and to continue to do my job and trying to hold expectations high, and also to support the safety of this environment and the dedication to joyful creation. So I think that's one way we do it is, and when people feel seen, you know, we all just light up, you know.
Hmm. And what I'm very curious, what are you listening to right now? Like, what
Hmm.
music are you listening to? Like, is there anything right now that you would say that, has been an inspiration?
You know, it's interesting. I've kind of been returning to Bach a lot lately, into the cantatas. You know, I had spent so much time of my life in that repertoire, and it's not that I ever left it, but I've been, you know, I'm pretty in love with how much creation is going on right now. There's so many composers writing such great choral music, so I'm really interested in what's being composed today, and that's where a big part of my focus is just what are people writing and how are they writing into the issues of the day too, and how are they creating really beautiful art in response to their lives right now. So, but in the midst of that, I have been finding, just during COVID time particularly, I've been anchoring back in Bach again, and that's such a beautiful and vast repertoire that I love a lot. So, I've been listening to that, and let me think. Um, well, really lately, I'll just say there was a little mix-up in the catalog at Texas State, that I thought I was teaching the oratorio class this fall, and so I was refining my oratorio class. And just about a week ago, literally, I learned it was actually madrigals and part songs. And so I've been, oh dear, you know, and I mean, I guess I could kind of wing it, but I don't want to. I don't ever feel good. I want to give it a lot of thoughtful prep. And so I'm kind of doing a sort of healthier version of 24/7 of, oh my God, I got to get this ready.
Hmm.
And so I've been listening to a lot, and but I'm opening it up a lot. What I've just had a really interesting listen to was Philip Glass, a madrigal opera. I hadn't known that work, and I'm going to include that. It's a fascinating piece, and if people don't know it, it's pretty interesting. Um, and I'm going to include spirituals in this course. Actually, it's sort of a shorter choral works kind of thing, and yet I was sort of shocked to see that. I mean, I was seeing a lot of syllabi, sort of from what people are teaching across the country, reminded once again of our Eurocentric approach to teaching choral literature. And so we're going to actually do 3 weeks on many of the songs of the enslaved Africans here in this country. It's such an important part of our repertoire. It is such an important repertoire, let me just say that. And I feel like so too often we've sort of assigned it to just the very last piece on the program, you know, to kind of be an upbeat something and bring people to their feet, or, you know, and I've always been challenged by that. And I like to challenge people too, to say, really look deeper into this as a repertoire that has so much more to offer than just a concert closer. It's like some of the jewels of our choral repertoire, and then some of these amazing choral arrangements. I was just living again with one of my favorites, Leonard Dupar's "City Called Heaven." You know, it's like an art song. It's so good. Conspirari did a big spirituals project several years ago, and it was with this idea of being devoted to it in an ongoing way as a repertoire. Um, and not just as novelty pieces because it feels diminishing to do that. Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. And we're just about out of time here. Can you tell us what to look for? What are you about to be? What are you going to release? Or should we be expecting anything exciting?
I think yes, yes, and yes. So I would say we September 18th is a release date for a new CD that we're bringing into the world. I'm really excited about it. It's all works for guitars and voices. So the longest work on the program is this work by Nico Muli called How Little You Are, and it's for 12 guitars, 3 guitar quartets and choir and a soprano soloist that's just killer knockout good. And Esteli Gomez does that. But we had the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet, Texas Guitar Quartet, and Austin Guitar Quartet. Also, a wonderful work by Kyle Smith called The Dawn's Early Light. Just a powerful piece. There's a short piece that I wrote. And then the CD opens with Rena Ishmael, um, a wonderful setting of hers that we're calling When the Guitar. It was originally called When the Violin. It's a new version of it, but it's set to a poem of the Persian poet Hafiz. And so that's really, really special. I'm excited to get a chance to share that with you all. And then, and something that's pretty cool that I think might be of interest to people listening to, we are creating a songbook. And really, when I say songbook, I mean a big, kind of a vast collection of new songs. We're asking all kinds of folks to write new songs for the new world that we are trying to co-create together. And so probably within a month or two, we're going to be about ready to start launching some of those songs. We've already had probably 25 or 30 submissions. And I think over the next year, year and a half, we're planning that there will be probably 250, 300 songs in this collection that will be ongoing.
Wow. And these are short
Mm.
songs, or
Yeah, and they're not choral works. They're not, I mean, these are songs that like lay people can sing, is what we keep telling everybody. And we have folk singers and pop singers, and we've got
ah,
composers, and we've got young up and comings. This is the first thing I've ever written, and yeah, so this
cool.
is super cool. So, and if we know folks who are interested in participating, I always want to say just shout out down to Conspirare. But it's been beautiful to see the response, and we're really excited. And so I think people will love singing these coming into the future.
Awesome. Now we want to just leave with a little bit of music. We've got some options here that we could play. Perhaps "I Love You, Wonderful World." We could do "Hope of Living," and I think we have audio for the singing guitars as well. Is there a preference?
No, no, no. Well,
I know it's like choose which of your babies is more important.
yeah. We could probably end kind of mellow. It might be kind of fun. I mean, it won't be that sort of happy birthday party ending, but it'd be fun to share a little. This would be you're some of the first people that would get to hear this recording, just this one track. We could do Rena's piece. I think if you have When the Guitar, maybe that might. And this is the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet and Conspirare, and it's a beautiful, beautiful text too. Yeah. It's about forgiveness, really. You know, when the heart can learn to forgive, when the guitar, learns to forgive, it starts singing. It's our true singing begins after forgiveness.
Awesome. So Brittany is going to cue us up, and we'll.
That's the one on SoundCloud.
Yes.
Oops.
And we just say good luck to all teachers right now. We know you're walking the gauntlet, and just thinking of it, y'all sending big coral hugs out to everybody.
I know it's definitely going to be a challenging
I,
start to the
apo-
year.
I
Yeah.
apologize. I'm having trouble getting this to cooperate with me. Do you happen to have a link that you can try?
Let me see if it will open up for me, and then if not, that's all right. We'll share out the
So
link for
so
folks
fine.
to be able to listen to.
We can always do a little wonderful world or Jake Runestead, either one.
why don't we do a little bit of Jink Runestad, and we'll end off on that.
Okay.
It's been a really rich conversation, and I think the text "There are beautiful wild forces within us" is much of what we've been talking about with this creativity today, and centering with that into listening.
I love that. Thanks for letting me be a part of your conversation.
Oh, what a pleasure!
Great.
This
Here we
is
go.
The Hope of Loving #2, Wild Forces by Craig Hella Johnson.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Craig. Love that performance. What a great piece. It is such a fun thing to sing. I love the sense of rhythm that you guys bring to that. I love just to be able to feel all those small macro beats just pulsating throughout. It's just so lovely, so lovely. Thank you for all that you do. It's so inspiring to see what you're doing. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Brittany, as well for joining us. And everyone that has been watching today. We'll be back on Thursday. We'll be checking in with Kevin Mimley. We'll be seeing what he's up to and delving into one of his works, We Will Sing of a Dream. So we'll catch you then on Thursday. And so thanks, folks, for tuning in.